Hey, good day, good morning. It's March 11th, 2022 at 8:15 a.m. my time. A lot of activities going on. I got to remind you, as I always do, if you want to see these things uncut in their entirety so you get the full context, please check out YouTube at Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con. Please like and subscribe. It's also incredibly important to get the numbers up over there because I don't know how much longer we can last on TikTok without getting kneecap, but you never know. Right now we're approaching 500,000 views and all sorts of stuff. That's actually on hashtag Patrick Lovell. The con's actually close to hashtag the con is up to like 800,000. It's just remarkable. And I'm fielding a lot of comments that I want to address in this morning, but a couple of things to kind of put into perspective regarding the world writ large versus kind of how you have perspective of this and why the con matters to everything that's underway. So ultimately, it's Groundhog Day. Nothing's changed for 20 years. You just don't understand how the power works. And the answer is in the con. The con is the Ark of the Covenant. It's the Holy Grail. It's at www.thecon.tv. And all of the answers are there. It's not something that is ancient history by any means. And I'll ask you this, so if you want to think of that as ancient history, did you think Jeffrey Epstein was ancient history when it was like revealing that Clinton might have been involved with like some crazy, high, profile intelligence, sex trafficking? Yeah, bullshit. No, of course you wanted to know what happened when Jeffrey Epstein ended up getting hung in prison and nobody knows who did what, when, and how, and all the rest of it. Same with any other, huge sort of secret that finally gets revealed. I mean, this is just the story of the way the world works, okay? And we've been under the thumb of this power literally for probably 5 decades, but it just got insane as we got to the turn of the century, the late 90s, because of policy deregulation of the Clinton administration that led to everything that's created the world that we live in. 9/11 is a part of that. 2008 is a part of that. COVID may very well be a part of that. And everything that's happening with the war in the Ukraine right now and Putin's invasion, I think is the exact same. So what we're hearing, or a continuation, I should say, and this is the struggle right now. So I think it's a battle between the West, which is completely corrupt, and the East, which is completely corrupt. I just think that Russia, China, Brazil, and potentially Saudi Arabia are maneuvering right now for a new global, and India, even though they're a democracy, for kind of a new global order based on, maybe transitioning from the dollar, the world's reserve currency, to something else, be it crypto or possibly yuan or whatever. But I think that's what this is, and it could potentially lead to World War III, which is insane given all of the other problems. But what our battle has to be is the internal struggle, because really the West is just corrupt. What are we going to do? We're going to, fight over airspace in the Ukraine because why? Because we're saving democracy? No, we're not. It's a military-industrial juggernaut. And while I like the Ukrainians and I want to see them, cease the hostilities and everything that's going on, I don't see that happening right now. I think 2 million people have flooded Western Europe and Poland and all that kind of thing that have fled from Ukraine. And as Zelensky is really a courageous guy, man. But I mean, come on, Russia is just overwhelming power, and if Putin wants to take it, and we're not going to stop him, we're not going to stop him. And ultimately, it looks to me like the Saudis are basically leaning into whatever Putin's got going on. I think back to that fateful picture that we saw a few years ago with MBS, the head of Saudi Arabia's royal family, and Putin sitting side by side. And I thought to myself, oh man, that's not a good sign. And here we are, right? So ultimately, look, I got to give you guys a couple of pop culture references, and I want to answer some of your questions in the midst of this at the same time. So look, my last name is Lovell. Lovell is mid-century English, and it literally means the wolf. I find that kind of fascinating because twofold in terms of cultural references. I'm going to start with something that seems relatively obscure, but to paint this picture. So Captain Jim Lovell, obviously the namesake Lovell, was the captain of Apollo 13. Apollo 13, that story, was this incredible heroic feat by the three astronauts in Apollo 13 that had to reconfigure all of the systems within the capsule to be able to create a trajectory and a miracle to land safely. Otherwise, they would have bounced off into space, never to be heard from again. What it showed was just the tenacity and the on-the-fly ability of these guys with the right stuff to be able to figure out problems and create solutions to literally save their lives. We're all collectively in that situation right now, even though the problem has been existing for a very long time. You just didn't know it. That's why 500,000 of you are actually paying attention to what I'm saying right now that weren't paying attention a month ago. So to continue with the cultural reference, look, guys, or I should say we'll just stick it with that. But everything is Game of Thrones, okay? Because when you get the White House and Congress, that's the Iron Throne. And when you get the Iron Throne, you get the Iron Bank, okay? We're about to approach the midterms. And a lot of people are asking me out there, okay, why are you landing on Trump so hard? What's he have to do with this? And then what about, of course, and the whataboutism, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Biden, and so forth. Yeah, people, if you watch Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con in its entirety without 3-minute clips, you'll get to see that, of course, I go after both, but I'm going to try to keep it, neck and neck here so we can do it in 3-minute clips to try to get you there. So ultimately, Biden has been a part of the system for 4 decades, okay? And what is the system? It's literally what happens in Delaware. It's corporations and LLCs, and it's this collusion of white shoe law firms and banks and financial interests to keep LLC obfuscation so that people can run rackets and not be held accountable for it, or they could go bankrupt. That's part of it from Biden's side, not to mention he's been with credit cards the whole time in the prison industrial complex. And that's another side of it. What about Pelosi? Okay, Pelosi was literally just a fundraiser for the Democratic Party in the Bay Area. She comes in, she ends up elevating to the top of the Senate. Why? Because she's a fundraiser. What's that tell you? Again, it's about corruption. She comes in, and I think a salary ultimately of senators are like in the $200,000 range. The woman is worth over $120 million right now. Do the math. It's corruption. Same with freaking Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is owned by Wall Street. Wall Street is not our friend, okay? Wall Street doesn't work for the people. Wall Street doesn't work for the United States. In fact, it could give a flying rat's ass about life, liberty, and justice for all and the integrity of law. They break the law every day, all day, and they're funding the Democratic Party. Okay, so there's that. So is Trump any different? No! Trump has been up to this his entire career. The guy inherits like close to $1 billion. His dad, Fred Koch, was involved with all sorts of predatory behavior through real estate all over, the boroughs of New York his entire career. He hands Trump, literally $1 billion. Trump gets involved with the racket. He is the racket. He was playing with the mob from the very beginning in Manhattan, and then ultimately this thing evolves into control fraud. It goes back to the 70s, and it really, I think, picked up steam in a big way in the 80s because of junk bonds and the S&L crisis and the likes of Michael Milken and Drexel Burnham Lambert and all that smoke and mirrors bullshit, which is all based on short-term and private equity, okay? You need to understand how this thing works because this is what is flying the fucking USS 747 into the Twin Towers, which is very relevant to what it is that I'm going to try to get to. But ultimately, going back to the cultural reference in Game of Thrones, if you get the White House and Congress, you get the Iron Bank, which is the Federal Reserve. And that's what everybody's battling over. And that's what they always battle over, because if you've got that, then you've got access to controlling the world. But here's the thing, in terms of the Ukraine and Russia and everything else, I think they're trying to change that. I really think that they're trying to domino the dollar into whatever their global currency becomes. And if it's, the BRIC countries, including Saudi Arabia, we got something to be really concerned about, because if the dollar collapses, we don't have that leverage anymore to, bail our way out with fictional, fiat currency that goes into the asset managers to hyperinflate assets, because the damn Federal Reserve isn't working on behalf of full employment and low interest rates. It's working on behalf of protecting rich people's assets. That's it. Okay. Once again, the Iron Throne, Congress, the presidency, the Iron Bank. Okay. Which also includes the judiciary, if you want to know the truth. So, which is not separation of powers, so we don't live in a democracy. You live in a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal system. So again, going back to the cultural reference and some intersections of who I am. Again, my last name is Lovell. It means wolf in mid-century English. And, I remember when the last season of Game of Thrones, everybody was like, talking about, the whole social media thing was like, who do you support? Who did you back the whole time? What families were you a part of? And all that kind of stuff. And I was always, you guessed it, a Stark, right? I was all about Arya Stark. I was all about Jon Snow. But, of course, raised in the House of Stark and everything that constitutes, especially when Jon Stark gives the ultimate line at the very end when he had a chance to lie to Cersei. And he basically said, and everybody asked him, why did you do it? Because he said, when the world becomes nothing but lies, all you do is get better and better lies. And he was going to play that game. It's just about lying, power, smoke and mirrors, obfuscation, LLCs, the system, which is on display at the con, www.thecon.tv. You gotta get the con in your head to understand how the system works, because I'm trying to, facilitate this mass movement to create a pushback to purge corruption. Okay, so here's where we are in the in the television reference. We're in the Battle of the Bastards. Remember the Battle of the Bastards? It was one of the greatest TV episodes I've ever seen, but it was just so hard to watch because it's twisting, mass of humanity and this just horrible suffering and everything else. And then, of course, Jon Snow ends up prevailing, right? Well, if those who believe in truth and justice, in liberty and justice for all, we got to prevail, because what we're up against is corruption on one side of the fence and, white supremacy on the other. And so, again, going to Donald Trump has been a part of this con from the very beginning. And, ultimately he was into documentation fabrication as it related to Trump Real Estate and Trump University, which he got nailed on, and he had to pay $25 million, which I think was the only time he actually admitted guilty to anything for Trump University for predatory lending. But there was another side of this, okay? So the other side of Trump is the guy's been money laundering for UAE, Saudi Arabia, and of course Putin forever through Deutsche Bank, who's the only ones who would give him loans, and that's what the whole Trump real estate empire was all about. And by the way, same with his Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, who's a big wig in Hollywood, because all the Russians were plugging money into Hollywood, okay? I'm in dangerous territory. None of these people want the world to know what's going on, but they're in the Battle of the Bastards, and we're in the Battle of the Bastards right now. Somebody's got to come out on top. I hope it's us, because that's what this is all about. The con is the con is the lost art. It's the Holy Grail. We're at the edge of the freaking Red Sea. I'm trying to get us to part the Red Sea to go through it to liberty and justice for all, which is literally what Moses was all about, because all these other guys are pharaohs. That's what it is. It's just corruption that controls the world. Don't you get it? Same as it ever was. I could go on and on, but we got another 500,000 today that we didn't have. We're going gangbusters. Man, go to Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Make your comments known. And I'm going to finish up with this. Look, Russell Brand, Jon Stewart, they're all looking for these answers, but yet they're not getting them from us. And that's the thing. We're trying to get their attention, but you know what? Fine. I'll go directly to you, the people. I've got the answers the world is looking for. And I'm not smiling because it's funny. It's just ridiculous. This whole thing is absolutely insane. And it could be the end of the world, or it could be the great rebirth, or a lot of people are calling the reset. I would love to see the reset towards liberty and justice for all and separation of powers to get the United States back out of the freaking toxic grip of polluted corruption. Wouldn't you? Don't you not like or hate Pelosi and Schumer and Biden and Trump? Yeah, they're all in on it. Have you seen a corollary between their ages and where they came from? Duh! Holy freaking shit. You getting it now? It's up to us, really, Gen X. It's got to be Gen X that rises this, and our friends from the millennials and Gen Z and all the rest coming out the pipe. Guys, you're getting played, and not by me. I just want us to live in a country that's fair and decent and that has harmony for people to have a fair shot and to get a slice of the American dream, which has been devastated and destroyed and murdered and betrayed by the system that we reveal. Please join us. #the resurrection. Let's get on this. Onwards and upwards.